What's up, dogs? First of all, I am coming close to 10,000 subscribers. And when I hit 10,000 subscribers, I think it might be nice to do something to celebrate that. But I have absolutely no idea what that could be. So if any of you guys have any suggestions for videos you'd like to see that are maybe a bit different to the sort of things that I usually do, just something I could do to celebrate the 10,000 subscriber occasion, then please let me know and I'll consider your suggestions. But what I wanted to talk about today was climate change, and in particular the question of what kind of moral duties individuals have with respect to climate change. There's an argument that I sometimes hear which goes something like this: I can't make a difference. Even if I were to be as environmentally friendly as possible, indeed even if I were to just shoot myself so that I no longer have any negative environmental impact whatsoever, this would make basically no difference to the situation with climate change. In fact, even if millions of people massively changed their lives so as to reduce their impact on the climate, it would make very little difference. It looks like the only thing that's going to make a difference are major policy changes. We actually need the government to step in and pass far stricter regulations on the behaviour of companies and on the behaviour of everybody. And unless we've got everybody making these sacrifices, then it's basically hopeless. So at the moment, that's not happening. And so since it looks like we're all going to hell anyway, might as well enjoy yourself. Why bother making any kind of sacrifice? I mean, it's kind of, in a way, a utilitarian argument. We're all going to hell anyway, you might as well enjoy yourself. Might as well maximise your pleasure rather than make sacrifices. So there does seem to be something wrong with this argument. And initially, it struck me as kind of similar to the situation with voting. I recently did a video on the ethics of voting. Now, there's a common view people have that citizens of a democracy have some sort of moral duty to vote. But the problem with this is that an individual vote will almost certainly make no difference whatsoever to the outcome of an election. The chances of an election being decided by just one vote are minuscule. So you know when you go into the election that your vote it has an infinitesimal chance of actually making a difference. So, it's similar then to the situation with climate change. An individual person has no real power to make a difference. So I was thinking, could we draw on the literature on voting and on the notion of a duty to vote to explain why people would have a moral duty to help with climate change? Could the arguments transfer? And maybe they can, but then it also struck me that there are some interesting differences, I think, between these cases, some major differences. So, I think there are three major differences. First difference is that democracy is functioning. It makes sense to say that somebody who doesn't participate in democracy, somebody who doesn't vote, is in a sense a free rider, because they are gaining the benefit of living in a democracy without contributing to the operation of the democracy. So they're getting the benefit without paying the cost, without paying their way. They're a free rider. But the situation is completely different with climate change, because the climate is breaking down. So you can't really be a free rider because you're not gaining any benefit. If I'm in a democracy and I don't vote, I'm gaining the benefit of a functioning democracy without participating. But if I refuse to become more environmentally friendly, if I refuse to make sacrifices for the environment, I'm not gaining the benefit of a healthy environment because the environment's fucked anyway. So if the government were to impose major policy changes such that everybody would be forced to change their lives in big ways, and we would be taking steps to solve the problem of climate change, then in that situation I would be a free rider if I avoided making the sacrifices that everybody else was making. But it doesn't seem quite right to say that I would be a free rider in this situation today, because it's all breaking down anyway. I'm not gaining any benefits. A second difference between climate change and voting is that in order to become environmentally friendly, it would require a far greater sacrifice. Voting doesn't really require any sacrifice. At least not here in the UK. I mean, here in the UK, voting just requires walking like a couple of minutes down the road to the polling station. I think actually in the US, because apparently your infrastructure is completely screwed up over there, voting is far less accessible. And I've seen news reports that in the US sometimes people have to wait in lines for hours every day in order to vote, which is just crazy to me. I can't imagine why you have let your infrastructure get to that sort of position. But still, it doesn't require much sacrifice, relatively speaking. I mean, you vote once every 4 years, is it, that you would have a general election there? So you're not voting very often, and it still only takes a few hours. So it's not a major sacrifice. But of course, becoming environmentally friendly, actually, that is a big sacrifice. Even things like I don't know, giving up meat, say. That's not exactly a major sacrifice, but it's a much bigger sacrifice than just walking down to a polling station. But the third point, or maybe this is a slightly different way of making the second point, the third point is that there's no limit on the sacrifices that you have to make in order to become environmentally friendly. So to say that you have a moral responsibility to vote, it's very clearly defined what you have to do. You have to participate in elections. You have to walk out the house, go to the polling station, put a tick in a box. But if we say that there's a moral responsibility to reduce your environmental impact, you can always say, well, how far do you go? So I can drive less and use public transport more. Better, I can use only public transport. Better, I can never use any motorised vehicles whatsoever. Similarly, I could reduce my meat consumption, or I could entirely eliminate my meat consumption, or I could entirely eliminate my consumption of any meat and dairy or any animal products. So that it's sort of limitless. Obviously, the way to maximally reduce your environmental impact would be to kill yourself. Nobody thinks we should go that far. So it's kind of undefined what sort of sacrifice people have to make. I have heard the response to this that it's maybe not, the situation isn't really so undefined because, for instance, well, you need to use cars sometimes, like in order to get a job, say. In order to maintain a job, I'm going to have to either use a car or maybe use a bus or something in order to get to the job. But actually, I don't think that's right, because you don't have to have a job. I mean, yeah, you need a car in order to maintain a job, but why would you need a job? You don't need a job. You need a job in order to keep your house, but you don't need a house. You could just go and live in the woods like Ted Kaczynski. It would be possible to do that. And so the point is, it seems like it's always possible for somebody to have less of an environmental impact. And that seems to be a difference. So anyway, I guess the point of this is just, it struck me that maybe we could appeal to the literature on the duty to vote and maybe see if that could apply to climate change. But actually there are big differences between the duty to vote and the kind of duty that individuals have to reduce their environmental impact. So yeah, I'm not really sure what my conclusion is here, but those were just some thoughts on that topic. Bye.